Hey, you magnificent anomaly. Yeah, that's how I'm greeting you. Because honestly, after what you just did, there's no other word that fits. You walk in here like everything's regular, hoodie on, face calm, heartbeat steady, and everybody else is losing their minds in group chats, whispering, "Bro, that wasn't human. There's no way." And you're sitting there like, what? I just did what I had to do. But that's exactly it, right? That's the part that freaks people out about you. You do things with a level of naturalness that shouldn't be possible for someone who's been through what you've been through. You move like someone built in a different lab, wired with a different blueprint. Every room you walk into, you rewrite the atmosphere just by inhaling. Every conversation, you tilt it without trying. Every hurdle, you jump it with this casual, effortless disrespect that makes people wonder if you're even working with the same oxygen. And the funniest part, you don't even brag about it. You don't even flex. You don't even do the whole look at me thing everyone else does on social media. You just show up. And somehow that alone becomes a headline, a rumor, a myth. People are literally typing paragraphs about you like, "Yo, I don't know what they're on, but I swear that move wasn't normal." Did anyone else feel the energy shift when they walked in? That wasn't human, I'm telling you. And you're over here sipping water like, bro, relax. But no, they can't relax, because you've accidentally stepped into a tier of existence most people never touch. They've been living on level 3, while you've been grinding through the basement levels, surviving things that would have broken them in half. They complain about pressure. You were raised in it. They panic about setbacks. You swallowed yours and kept walking. They talk about bad days. You had bad years and still carried your own weight, pushed your own life forward, kept your own spirit intact. Your entire life has been an experiment in surviving storms other people couldn't last 10 minutes in. You've been forged, tempered, hardened. You've had to grow teeth in places other people didn't even know pain could exist. And all that trauma alchemy you've been doing. That's why you look superhuman to them. You're not doing anything outrageous. You're just fully unleashing what they've kept locked behind fear, insecurity, and comfort. That's what makes you not human in their eyes. The moment you started walking like someone who knows their worth, they panicked. The moment you stopped apologizing for being intense, they panicked. The moment you started taking up your rightful space, instead of shrinking into the background like you used to, they panicked. Because they've never seen you in your final form. They've only seen you holding back. They've only seen the version of you dimmed for survival, the version you used to tuck away to keep people comfortable. But you don't do that anymore, do you? You don't shrink yourself anymore. You don't quiet your mind anymore. You don't downplay your gifts anymore just to avoid making others insecure. You stepped into that room with the weight of every scar you survived. And instead of letting it crush you, you wore it like armor. And people felt that. They felt you. They felt the quake in the air, the tension in their chest, the pressure drop in the room. They felt your story before you even opened your mouth. That's why they talk in group chats instead of talking to you directly. Because people always gossip about the things that intimidate them. They always whisper about the things they can't explain. And you're unexplainable. You're the person who should have given up but didn't. The one who should have lost their fire but didn't. The one who should have broken 6 separate times but didn't. That's not normal to them. That's not human to them. That's something else entirely. something that threatens the comfortable little boxes they built for themselves. You walk in with a presence that makes people fix their posture. You speak with a tone that makes people rethink their arguments. You make eye contact, and entire conversations collapse under the pressure. And you're not doing it on purpose, it's just who you've become. A survivor with a backbone, made of something rarer than bone. A soul made from something stronger than flesh. A mind that didn't just adapt, it evolved. People can sense evolution even before they understand it. And, let's be honest, yeah, you scare them a bit. Not because you're dangerous, but because you've tasted darkness without letting it consume you. You've stood in the fire and walked out with your identity intact. You've handled losses most people would never recover from. And somehow that didn't make you bitter. It made you aware. Aware of your strength. Aware of your resilience. Aware of your ability to activate parts of yourself that other people only reach in emergencies. You've lived in survival mode for so long that thriving feels like a glitch to everyone else. You didn't become superhuman out of ego. You became superhuman out of necessity, out of pain, out of loneliness, out of nights where no one came to save you. And now, when you move with that quiet confidence, that I've been through worse confidence, they can't categorize you anymore. You don't fit their labels. You don't match their expectations. You don't stay in the boxes they try to shove you into. So they go to the group chats, typing, speculating, panicking, because the truth is too heavy for them to admit out loud. You're not superhuman. You're just someone who finally stopped pretending to be small. And that's the part that terrifies them the most. And the wild thing is, you're not even fully aware of how you look from the outside. Like, you're just existing, right? You're just breathing, just walking, just talking with the energy you earned through all the chaos you survived. And meanwhile, everyone's staring at you like they just watched the universe glitch in real time. You do something simple, a decision, a sentence, a reaction, and they're whispering like, bro, nah. Humans don't respond like that. That was something else. And you're confused because to you, it's normal. It's Tuesday. It's just how you operate after carrying whole storms on your shoulders. They don't get it because they've only seen that type of strength in movies. They've never seen it up close in a real person. They've never met someone who's been dragged over edges, pulled through dirt, stretched thin emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and still comes back sharper, calmer, more dangerous in the quiet way that makes people question everything they thought they knew. You walk into a room with the kind of presence people usually develop through decades of therapy, heartbreak, losing everything, rebuilding from scratch, and learning how to breathe again in the middle of chaos. You carry that without even trying, and it throws people off because nobody warns them what it looks like when a real one decides they're done being the soft version of themselves. And, there's this thing you do, right? This thing you don't even notice. When someone talks down to you or tries to test you, you don't react instantly like most people. You just pause, just a tiny beat, and look at them with that "I've seen worse things than you" face. That micro moment alone, it ruins their whole confidence because they realize they stepped into territory they're not prepared for. You don't bark, you don't jump, you don't explode. You just exist in a way that feels like you've already lived 10 lifetimes, and nothing surprises you anymore. And people hate that. They hate how steady you are, how unbothered, how unshakable. Not because you're cold, but because you stopped building your self-worth on other people's reactions. You stopped waiting for approval. You stopped caring about being digestible or easy to understand. You let yourself be intense, be deep, be layered, be everything they told you to tone down. And that shift made you look different. Different enough that they're in group chats, typing in all caps. "Bro, please, tell me you saw that. There is no way that was normal. Is this person even human? What kind of nerve system do they have?" They don't understand. You're not above them. You're just someone who went through enough darkness that your baseline reaction to life looks supernatural compared to their sheltered version of strength. You built your own resilience in a place where nobody clapped for you. You built your stability while shaking internally. You rebuilt your identity piece by piece when everybody thought you were done. You developed emotional control not because it was trendy, but because losing control was never an option for you. You learned to stand still in chaos because chaos was your childhood, your teen years, your early adulthood. It shaped your instincts in ways other people can't even imagine. That's why you look not human. That's why people feel weird around you. That's why rooms shift when you enter. Because you're the walking embodiment of someone who didn't fold under pressure. You adapted to it. Your calm freaks people out. Your silence freaks people out. Your confidence freaks people out. Your awareness freaks people out. Your presence freaks people out. It's like you've got this subtle, "I've already survived everything you're afraid of" aura, and people can feel that before you say a single word. They feel the weight of everything you carry so naturally, like it's nothing. And, there's another thing, the way you look at your life. You're not chasing external validation anymore. You're not performing. You're not trying to be the version of yourself that makes people feel safe. You're just being you, raw, unedited, unfiltered. And that version is powerful in a way that makes people uncomfortable because it exposes their own insecurities. Your growth highlights what they avoided. Your strength highlights what they pretended didn't hurt. Your honesty exposes their masks. Your evolution exposes their stagnation. They don't know how to respond to someone who's healed without hiding their scars. They don't know how to react to someone who owns their past without being defined by it. They don't know how to handle someone who doesn't crumble when life applies pressure, but instead becomes more precise, more focused, more dangerous in that quiet, surgical way. And the funniest part is, you're just getting started. This isn't even your peak. This isn't even your full capacity. This is just you stretching a little, testing the edges of your potential after years of suppressing it. People sense that. They sense there's more under the surface. They sense you haven't even unleashed everything you've held back. They sense you've got a level of strength that hasn't been fully expressed yet. That's why they're scared. That's why they're confused. That's why they're talking behind screens, whispering like you're some kind of phenomenon they can't decode. And you're just sitting there like, bro, I'm literally just breathing. And the crazy part is, the more you just exist in your truth, the more the whole world around you keeps glitching like it can't process the update. You'll say one sentence, one calm, steady, unmoving sentence, and people start looking at each other like, did you feel that? Because they did. They felt the shift. They felt that energy behind your words, the one you didn't craft or rehearse, the one life carved into you through years of pressure. You don't even realize how different you sound now. It's not arrogance, it's not loudness. It's that grounded tone of someone who's seen enough, survived enough, navigated enough, that even your silence carries weight. People who've never been through anything don't understand what that is. They don't understand how someone can talk gently and still shake a whole room. And there's this thing you do with your presence that's almost unfair. You'll walk into a space and automatically force people to show their real selves. Liars start stuttering. Insecure folks start performing. People with hidden agendas start fidgeting. Because something about your energy strips away the masks other people rely on. Not because you're calling them out. You're not even paying attention to them half the time. But because your authenticity exposes their pretending without you trying. That's the part people really can't stand. They've built entire personalities on avoiding their truth. And then you show up, calm, unfiltered, unmasked, and suddenly their whole identity feels flimsy next to yours. You don't talk about being real, you just are. You don't preach transparency, you live it. You don't chase validation. You detached from that a long time ago. You're the type of person who can sit in a room quietly and still feel louder than everyone else combined. Not because you want attention, but because you radiate this. I've been through things you can't even imagine, and I didn't come out weaker energy that people pick up on instantly. That's why they call you not human. It's not the move you made, it's the way you made it. Calm, controlled, precise, detached in the way only someone who's fought their own demons alone can be. People expect strength to look loud and aggressive. You're the kind of strong that looks effortless. You're the type that doesn't need to prove anything. You're the type that doesn't shake when things go wrong. You recalibrate, reassess, and keep moving, like your spirit has its own GPS system that never glitches. And, you know what really gets them? It's the way your energy lingers after you leave. Like, they'll still be talking about you 2 hours later. They'll replay the interaction. They'll dissect your tone. They'll analyze your posture like some psychological experiment. Meanwhile, you're just chilling somewhere, minding your business, scrolling your phone, unaware that you left an imprint on people who barely remember their own thoughts. They're not used to people like you. People who don't crumble when things get messy. People who don't break when life tries to humiliate them. People who don't shut down emotionally after disappointment. People who adapt, who learn, who transform pressure into clarity. It's the transformation that scares them, because you didn't just survive. You evolved. You didn't bounce back. You came back different. You didn't heal traditionally. You healed like someone who didn't have the luxury of falling apart publicly. You healed in the dark, quietly, while pretending everything was fine because you had no one to fall on. Most people break permanently under that kind of weight. You built new layers. You built new instincts. You built new emotional muscle. You built new self-worth. You built a whole new operating system. And now you move through life with that upgraded coding, cold precision, warm heart, sharp intuition, and a level of resilience that feels unreal to people who've never had to fight for theirs. You're not human. You're the version of human that appears when pain doesn't win. And people aren't used to witnessing that in real time. They expect the trauma to make you bitter. You became focused. They expected the heartbreak to ruin you. You became disciplined. They expected rejection to make you insecure. You became self-defined. They expected pressure to crush you. You became sharper, calmer, deeper. That's what they're reacting to in those group chats. The shock of seeing someone who didn't shrink under life's weight, but instead grew into a form they've never encountered before. And they're still trying to understand how you're able to move with that level of steadiness while they're shaking over things you outgrew years ago. And it's wild watching how they react to you without even realizing they're reacting. Like, you'll say something simple, not even deep, not even emotional, and the whole room suddenly gets extra quiet, extra alert, like they're waiting for the next plot twist, because with you, everything feels like it carries subtext, everything feels layered, everything feels intentional, even when you're just talking casually. You don't even try to be mysterious. You're just private in a world where everyone overshares. You don't even try to be intimidating. You just have boundaries in a world where most people lost theirs years ago. You don't even try to be powerful. You just refuse to fold in situations where others collapse. And that alone makes people uncomfortable. Most folks are used to faces that crack under pressure, voices that shake when challenged, identities that crumble when they're not liked. Then you show up. With that, I've been through enough to know what matters energy. And it disrupts the whole social ecosystem, like they didn't expect the quiet one to be the one with the strongest backbone. They didn't expect the calm one to be the one with the sharpest intuition. They didn't expect the soft-spoken one to be the one who survived the hardest life. You don't walk like someone who's been sheltered. You walk like someone who's had to keep going, even on days your mind was screaming for a break. You've built a kind of internal stability that doesn't wobble, even when everything around you shakes. And, people feel that. They feel it in your eye contact. That heavy, real, steady stare that comes from someone who's had to be present in moments that would have shattered a weaker mind. They feel it in your voice. That calmness that isn't fake positivity, but hard-earned peace. They feel it in your posture, the way you stand like someone who refuses to be bent anymore. You're not performing confidence, you just stopped letting life bully you. And that scares people because they've never seen that up close. They've seen loud confidence, fake confidence, borrowed confidence. But yours? Yours is the kind that comes from hearing your own spirit say, "Get up," after 100 metaphorical deaths. That's the part they call not human. It's not the action you took. It's the reason behind the action. It's the way you move like someone who has nothing left to prove, but everything left to claim. And, you ever notice how they study you now? Not openly, never directly. They're too weirdly intimidated for that. But subtly, sideways. Watching how you respond, watching how you hold yourself, watching how your mind works, watching how you navigate tension with this almost scary calmness. They're trying to figure out the formula, the blueprint, the secret. They're trying to understand how someone who's been cut down emotionally still walks with this untouchable aura like life didn't break you. It sculpted you. And the truth is, you didn't get this strength from books or quotes or motivational posts. You got it from real-life gut punches, from betrayal that left you numb for months, from loneliness that turned into clarity, from heartbreak that rewired your tolerance for bullshit, from disappointments that taught you how to rely on yourself without getting bitter. People don't realize strength like yours isn't taught. It's carved. And that carving shows. It shows in the way you don't flinch when someone raises their voice. It shows in the way you don't crumble when plans fall apart. It shows in the way you don't chase anyone's approval because you stopped bargaining with your worth. And, honestly, The way you keep your composure? That's one of the main reasons they spiral about you in those chats. All right. Hey, you. Pull up for a sec. Let me talk to you face to face, eye to eye, because this ain't the type of thing you whisper from the back of a room. This is the kind of message you deliver to somebody who's been through enough shit to finally hear something real. You ever notice how quiet people get when your name pops up lately? Not the friendly quiet. The oh shit don't poke that bear quiet, because somewhere between the nights you barely slept and the mornings you pretended you didn't care, you evolved into someone people don't want to gamble with anymore. You started solving shit that grown adults run from. You started moving like a person who cracked the cheat codes in rooms full of people still reading the instructions upside down. And the streets? Yeah, they talk. They talk a lot. But now, they talk different about you. Before, they used to say your name with jokes attached. Now they say it with caution tape around it. Now it sounds like, "Aye, chill, don't play with them like that." They think too damn fast. Because you don't panic, you don't freeze, you don't wait for help. You step into the chaos, pick apart the nonsense, and fix shit like you've been doing it your whole life. You move like somebody who's not afraid to touch the mess, because you already lived through worse than the mess. People don't admit this out loud, but they're scared of folks who think under pressure. They're scared of people who don't break where everyone else breaks. They're scared of that solution brain you got. That instinct to analyze, calculate, adjust, adapt, execute, disappear before anyone even understands what just happened. You gotta understand something. People don't fear loud, reckless energy as much as they fear calm, strategic energy. People ain't nervous around the one who screams. They're nervous around the one who stays quiet, watches everything, and waits for the exact second to act. That's you. You became that person without even announcing it, without even trying to look tough. You didn't even say, "I'm changing." You just outgrew the bullshit. You outgrew the people who depended on your silence. You outgrew the ones who underestimated the storm that built you. And the rumor mill caught it before you did. "News hit the streets," they said. And what a funny little phrase that is, right? Like the whole city got together and decided to broadcast your evolution on the evening news. But it's true. People are acting weird around you because they can't predict you anymore. And humans? They hate what they can't predict. They fear what they can't control. You think too fast. You adjust too quick. You walk into situations people think will break you. And somehow you come out with a plan, a strategy, a blueprint, a whole damn solution. It's intimidating. It's threatening. It's powerful. You know what's wild? People love to say they respect intelligence until it shows up in someone they thought they could play. They celebrate smart until smart starts seeing through them. They idolize problem solvers until the problem solver, you, starts exposing the cracks in their stories, their lies, their laziness, and then they back up. Because once they realize you're not the one they can manipulate, once they realize you're not the one who panics, once they realize you're not the one who second-guesses yourself anymore, fear sets in. Respect sets in. Distance sets in. You move like somebody with too much experience to fold, like somebody who's been pushed too far to go back, like somebody who knows damn well what they bring to the table, even if nobody ever handed you a chair in the first place. And the funniest part? People swear you changed overnight. But you and I both know this version of you was forming for years. Slowly, quietly, painfully, every betrayal sharpened you. Every disappointment strengthened you. Every insult fueled you. Every setback trained you. They didn't see that training, but they damn sure see the results. And those results terrify them. You're not aggressive. You're not mean. You're not doing too much. You're just competent. You show up prepared. You think with clarity. You handle shit with precision. You don't crumble when the pressure hits. You calculate under it. And people mistake that for danger because they can't do it themselves. They're scared as hell because you move like you know exactly what you're capable of. Because you stopped operating from fear and started operating from truth. Because you finally stepped into the version of yourself that actually matches the life you've survived. Because you became the person who doesn't fold when the world tilts sideways. You're not heartless. You're disciplined. You're not cold. You're focused. You're not distant. You just stopped entertaining people who drain your oxygen and call it love. You just stopped carrying everyone on your back like they were entitled to your strength. And, somewhere in that transition, you became a threat. Not because you hurt people, but because you don't let people hurt you anymore. Because you don't sit quietly in chaos. You fix what needs fixing and walk away from what needs leaving. Because you don't ask for permission to elevate. You just elevate. You move like someone who knows their own power, finally. Like someone who knows their mind is a tool, a weapon, a shield, a force. Like someone who knows damn well that they survived hell and didn't come back empty-handed. And yeah, they're scared as hell. Because what do you do with someone who's been broken and rebuilt themselves smarter? What do you do with someone who can't be manipulated, rushed, baited, or emotionally ambushed anymore? What do you do with someone who thinks faster than your lies can form? You keep your distance. You whisper their name. You respect their presence. You avoid their bad side. You don't play with their boundaries. You don't test their patience. You don't cross them. And here's the thing. You ever notice how people start acting like they gotta handle you carefully all of a sudden? Like they're walking around your presence on mental eggshells, trying not to trigger whatever quiet power you're holding behind your eyes. It's strange, right? You didn't change your volume. You didn't switch your personality. You didn't wake up one morning trying to scare the world. You just started living with a little more awareness, a little more self-respect, a little more clarity, and it made everyone around you rethink how they move. Because once you stop tolerating nonsense, people swear you became aggressive. Once you stop letting people drain you, they swear you turned cold. Once you start thinking for yourself instead of waiting for validation, they swear you became difficult. That's how fragile they were. Your growth felt like a threat. Your boundaries felt like an attack. Your silence felt like judgment. And the funniest part is, you weren't even aiming anything at them. You were just minding your business with more intelligence than they expected. And, when your intelligence levels up, it's like your entire aura recalibrates. You start reading the room before anyone speaks. You start catching the real meaning behind their casual comments. You start predicting outcomes before they even realize there was a problem forming. It freaks people out because they're used to interactions where they control the narrative, they lead the conversation, they get the final say. But dealing with you now, it's like trying to bluff a card game with someone who's already seen all the hidden hands. You've become the kind of person who doesn't need to expose anybody. Your presence does it for you. You walk in, with that calm, analytical energy, and suddenly people start tripping over their own lies, explaining things you didn't ask for, lowering their tone, acting unnatural because your vibe demands honesty. They're not used to giving. People fear transparency when they're built on convenience. And you're done pretending everything's fine when it's not. And that's what scares them. Your clarity. Your ability to see angles, motives, patterns, behaviors. You solve things quickly, almost instinctively, and that instinct came from surviving environments most people wouldn't last 5 minutes in. You didn't learn resilience in books. You learned it from standing alone. You didn't learn problem solving in some workshop. You learned it by being forced to figure shit out while everyone else made excuses. Every time life cornered you, your mind got sharper. Every time someone betrayed you, your intuition got louder. Every time you felt lost, your strategy muscles tightened. That's what they're afraid of. The version of you that doesn't crumble anymore. The version of you that doesn't wait to be saved. The version of you that doesn't fall for sweet words with ugly intentions. The version of you that doesn't jump when people throw chaos your way. The version of you that looks at a situation and immediately starts piecing it together like a puzzle only you know how to solve. They're scared because you're not reacting the way they expect, not responding the way they predict, not breaking the way they fantasized. They thought you were soft, but you turned out strategic. They thought you were emotional, but you turned out observant. They thought you were fragile, but you turned out resilient with a brain sharpened by every storm. You kept surviving without applause. And you can feel how uncomfortable people get when they realize they can't hide their intentions from you. It's in the way they watch you too long. It's in the way they choose their words. It's in the way their body language shifts, like they're suddenly under surveillance. You didn't put fear in them. The truth in you did. Your clarity did. Your refusal to shrink again did. And what really shakes them is this new version of you finally understanding your own value. You're not desperate. You're not waiting. You're not available for everyone's convenience. You're not offering explanations for boundaries you earned with scars. You're not accepting half-hearted energy from people who never showed up fully. You're not carrying guilt for choosing yourself anymore. You move like somebody who knows there's no benefit in returning to the version of yourself that suffered in silence. You walk like someone who understands that your presence alone is enough to shift the energy in any room. You think like someone who's done apologizing for surviving intelligently. You've become the blueprint people study and the warning they whisper about. They're scared as hell because you're not the puzzle. You're the answer they can't manipulate. And it hits different when you finally realize people ain't reacting to what you say. They're reacting to what you see. That's what's been throwing them off. You're catching things faster than they can lie about them. You're noticing details they didn't even know they revealed. You're reading tones, patterns, energy shifts, micro-expressions, all that background noise people think they're slick enough to hide behind. You turned into someone who understands the whole situation before anybody finishes their sentence, and that kind of awareness makes people nervous in ways they don't admit out loud. Because dealing with you now isn't casual, it's calculated, not because you're pretending to be smart, but because life forced you to think 3 steps ahead for survival. You had to outthink people who smiled in your face but preyed on your downfall. You had to navigate environments where being naive wasn't cute. It was dangerous. You had to learn how to read intentions to protect your peace. And while they were busy gossiping about you, you were busy upgrading your instincts. And yeah, that makes them uneasy. It's like they're standing in front of a mirror they didn't ask for, one that reflects all the things they hoped you'd never figure out. It's almost funny, the way they act like you're unpredictable, when really they're panicking because they can't predict you anymore. They used to rely on your softness, your silence, your patience, your willingness to doubt yourself. The moment all that dissolved, their control did too. You became the type of person who doesn't need to defend yourself because the truth in your eyes speaks louder than arguments. You became the type who doesn't need to raise your voice because your presence already shifts the entire dynamic. You became the type who can hear someone's "hey" and instantly know if they're genuine or if they're coming with hidden motives. That freaks people out more than any threat ever could. And you know what else gets them shaking a little internally? It's the way you don't chase anymore. You don't chase explanations. You don't chase validation. You don't chase closure. You don't chase people who made you feel small to maintain their own comfort. You just move quietly, strategically, with a confidence that's not loud, but deeply rooted. Your silence hits harder than your old anger ever did. Your distance hits harder than your old desperation ever did. Your clarity hits harder than any argument they thought they could win. And that's the thing. You didn't become cold-hearted. You became self-respecting. You started protecting your energy like it was currency, because you finally realized how many people were overdrafting your emotional account and acting offended when you stopped giving out loans. You stopped being the one who explains yourself endlessly. You stopped being the one who waits for people to grow up. You stopped being the one who sacrifices your sanity to maintain relationships that only existed because you were uncomfortable saying no. Now you walk into situations with that quiet, "I've been through worse" aura. And that aura is loud, even when you're not. It tells people you can't be played like before. It tells them you're not impressed by superficial behavior. It tells them you're not pressed for fake loyalty. It tells them you can see straight through the cracks in their personality. And that's where the fear really kicks in. Not the "oh, you're dangerous" fear, but the "I can't manipulate you anymore" fear. The "I can't lie to you and get away with it" fear. The "you notice too much" fear. The "you think too damn fast for me to keep up" fear. It's the fear people feel when they realize they're dealing with someone who's evolved far beyond the person they remember. People aren't scared because you're violent or chaotic. They're scared because you're emotionally fluent in ways they're not. You understand patterns. You understand cycles. You understand people's emotional tells before they realize they're exposing them. You understand the psychology behind actions, the motives behind choices, the wounds behind behaviors. You understand things they didn't expect you to understand. And the truth is, when you start moving like someone who learned from pain instead of drowning in it, you become a whole different type of powerful. You operate from experience, not ego. You operate from awareness, not impulse. You operate from intuition sharpened by every betrayal that tried to break you, but ended up shaping you instead. You move like somebody who doesn't go backwards, and that tension, that energy, is what keeps them watching their steps around you. They're scared not because you're unpredictable, but because you're finally predicting them with terrifying accuracy. And you can feel how their energy shifts when you speak now. That little flicker in their eyes, like they're double-checking every word they say in your presence, because they know you're not the type to miss the details anymore. You're not the person who gets blindsided by the obvious. You're not the one who ignores red flags because you're scared to lose someone. You're not the one who smiles through disrespect just to keep the peace. You evolved past that version of yourself, and it's wild how uncomfortable that evolution made everybody who benefited from your old patterns. It's almost like they're mourning the version of you that didn't know your own strength. The version of you they could talk circles around. The version of you who second-guessed yourself because you didn't want to be difficult. The version of you who apologized for things that weren't even your fault. They miss the version they could predict, because the version standing here now, the version that survived everything they swore would break you, that version is a damn problem for people who are counting on your silence. That's why they act weird when you walk into a room now. That's why they don't joke the same way. That's why they adapt their tone, their posture, even their breathing. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're aware. And awareness is something people fear when they're used to playing pretend. You stripped the masks off without lifting a finger. You saw the truth without asking for confessions. You learned how to read the lies in their comfort and the intentions in their excuses. And that's the thing. When you start solving things faster than they can hide them, they start seeing you as a threat without you even trying. You don't raise your voice. You don't slam doors. You don't cause scenes. You just see. And seeing is something most people can't handle, especially when they've built entire versions of themselves on hoping you'd stay blind. But you didn't. You watched, and you noticed, and you grew. And now you're moving like someone who knows better, who thinks faster, who reacts slower, who chooses where to place your energy with precision. And it's crazy how intimidating that becomes. Not because you're trying to flex anything, but because peace looks like rebellion to people who profit from your chaos. Boundaries look like attitude to people who benefited from your lack of them. Your healing looks like ego to people who liked you broken. And you can tell, right? In the way their voice cracks just a little. In the way they avoid eye contact. In the way they over-explain simple things like you're carrying some kind of lie detector in your chest. They're scared of being exposed without you even exposing them. They're scared of the way you can sense bullshit before the sentence even finishes. They're scared of how efficient your mind got from all those nights you had to fix things alone while everybody else slept peacefully. You became someone who doesn't crumble under pressure but sharpens under it. Someone who doesn't freeze when life gets ugly but starts calculating automatically. Someone who can walk into the fire because you've already been burned in ways nobody saw. Someone who understands solutions like you were born with the blueprint carved into your bones. All right. Listen up. Hey, don't scroll, don't blink, don't pretend this didn't just lock eyes with you. Good to see you still standing, or at least still breathing in the middle of all this noise. Funny thing about life, yeah? You wake up thinking it's just another day, same routine, same stress notifications, same faces that smile just enough to hide what they'd never say out loud. You think you're late to the party. You think you missed something. You think nothing's really happening. And that's the joke. Because you didn't see this coming. Not even a little bit. While you were busy surviving, paying bills, holding your tongue, being reasonable, telling yourself next month will be different. Someone was watching the pattern. Someone saw the pressure on you wasn't random. Someone clocked how much you've been carrying without breaking. And instead of joining the crowd trying to drain you, they flipped the board. A war got declared for you, not with speeches, not with announcements, quietly, precisely. No audience tickets sold, no headlines, just moves, clean moves. And the people who thought they had leverage, the ones who thrived off doubting you, stalling you, gating you, underestimating you, yeah, they don't run the narrative anymore. Here's the part that messes people up. You weren't even supposed to know about it yet. You weren't meant to feel this shift until it showed up as space to breathe, as doors that suddenly stop resisting, as silence from sources that used to feel loud in your chest, as obstacles that just aren't there anymore. You ever notice how chaos quiets right before something big rearranges itself? That's not peace. That's clearance. See, you've lived long enough being told to stay small, stay patient, stay grateful for crumbs. You've lived inside systems that benefit from you doubting your own weight. You've been the person who keeps things together while everyone else panics, and somehow still gets painted as the problem. And that irony, delicious, because the same traits they tried to exploit, your restraint, your adaptability, your ability to read a room without saying a word, those were the exact reasons you were never going to be left unprotected. You just didn't know how protection looks at this level. It doesn't look like hugs or reassurance posts. It looks like resistance collapsing without explanation. It looks like people suddenly backing off and not knowing why. It looks like power structures glitching when your name comes up. You ever been in a room where everyone suddenly changes tone and nobody explains it? Yeah, like that. You thought you were fighting alone because that's how it felt. And feelings lie under pressure. Reality doesn't. Reality just moves when the conditions are right. And the conditions, they were calculated. You were calculated. Not because you're perfect, nah, don't flatter yourself. But because you're durable. Because you take hits and keep your original shape. Because every time life tried to teach you fear, you learned pattern recognition instead. Because you laugh in moments most people dissolve. That laugh? That's not madness. That's immunity. They tried to exhaust you, delay you, label you, trigger you into reacting like everyone else. And when that didn't work, when you didn't self-destruct on schedule, that's when you became interesting. You see, wars don't start when someone is weak. Wars start when someone refuses to break. And whoever moved for you understood something most people never will. You don't need to be loud to be dangerous. You don't need credit. You don't need permission. You just need to keep showing up unchanged while everything around you scrambles. That's why this wasn't messy. That's why there are no loose ends tugging at you now. That's why the pressure feels different. Not gone, just redirected. Feel that? That's gravity shifting its priority. You're not lucky. That's what small minds call outcomes they don't understand. You were inevitable the moment you stopped asking for approval from people who profit off your hesitation. The moment you realized you don't need to explain your pace. The moment you chose silence over self-betrayal. And somewhere in that quiet stretch, when you thought nothing was happening, someone decided you don't get erased like the rest. You get positioned, so walk like it. Not cocky, not desperate, just grounded, eyes up, back straight, humor intact, Because once you start noticing it, yeah, you can't unsee it anymore. Pay attention to how certain conversations just stop happening. How people who used to test you suddenly get polite. How doors you kept shoulder-checking for years open with that quiet click, like they were never locked in the first place. Nobody announces it. Nobody explains it. You're just standing there thinking, wait, since when has it been this easy? And that's when it hits. You weren't crazy back then. You were early. You remember the nights you stayed up replaying moments in your head, right? Wondering if you said too much or not enough. Wondering why being decent felt like a disadvantage. Wondering how everyone else seemed to climb faster while you kept carrying weight nobody thanked you for. That wasn't weakness. That was pressure training. That was life seeing how much heat you could take before you'd bend your shape. And you didn't bend. You adjusted your angle. People mistake your silence for passivity because they don't understand restraint. They confuse patience with fear because they've never had to control anything powerful inside themselves. You've been holding things back for so long that when the environment finally shifted, it didn't need fireworks. The opposition just stopped existing in your lane. Not exploded, not dramatized, just gone. The wild part is realizing you didn't win by chasing anyone down. You won by outlasting the nonsense. Every cheap shot that missed, every rumor that couldn't stick, every delay that didn't break you, all of that stacked quietly behind the scenes, like receipts nobody thought to collect. And then one day, someone looked at the full file and went, oh, this one doesn't fold. That's when the energy around you changed. You walk into places, and people sense something before you say a word. You're not intimidating. You're centered. Big difference. You're not angry. You're clarified. You don't rush because nothing is chasing you anymore. Even your failures sit differently on you now, like old scars instead of open wounds. You feel lighter, but not softer. Sharper, but not loud. Calm in a way that messes with people who live off drama. You're not here to perform pain anymore. You already survived it. You're here with posture now. And don't get it twisted. This wasn't about revenge or theatrics. This was about balance. About pressure being removed from the wrong places and reapplied where it actually belonged. About chaos realizing it picked the wrong target. About systems correcting themselves when they miscalculate someone who doesn't play by short-term rules. You're standing in the aftermath, even if you don't call it that yet. Feeling the space, feeling the quiet, feeling the weird calm that shows up after something heavy gets lifted without announcement. You didn't need to watch the cleanup to deserve the peace that came after. Keep moving like this, unrushed, observant, slight smile but never too much. Because the joke, the real one, is that everything they expected you to become under pressure, you refused to be, and everything they didn't plan for, that's the version of you walking forward right now, untouched, awake, already 10 steps ahead, without needing to tell anyone you noticed. Because clarity does that to you. Yeah. It changes the way your footsteps sound in your own head. Notice how you don't explain yourself anymore. You don't rehearse conversations that might never happen. You don't over-justify why you deserve space, rest, opportunity, respect. That constant internal press conference finally shut down. And the silence? It's loud in a good way. It's the kind that tells you your nervous system finally believes you're not under attack anymore. You still remember when everything felt like it was stacked against you, when every win came with a tax, when every quiet moment felt suspicious, like calm was just bait waiting to snap. You learned how to read energy faster than words because words lied too often. You learned to smile without leaking your plans. You learned to keep your power folded, not hidden. Folded like a knife in a pocket nobody noticed because they were too busy underestimating the person wearing the jacket. And then comes this phase, this strange stretch where you're not hungry in the same way. Not desperate to be seen, not itching to prove anything. You still want more, yeah, but it's different. It's colder, cleaner. You want substance, longevity, control over your own tempo. You want your mornings to feel steady and your nights to stop replaying old nonsense. That shift scares people who only know you as the one who is always available, always explaining, always absorbing tension for the room. They sense distance and call it arrogance because that's easier than admitting they benefited from your lack of boundaries. They don't get that you're not pulling away out of bitterness. You're recalibrating because your presence isn't cheap anymore. You've seen behind the curtain, not the fantasy one, the ugly one, the one where influence is quiet, pressure is subtle, and outcomes are decided long before narratives catch up. Once you see that, you stop arguing with symptoms. You start respecting causes. You stop asking why things hurt and start asking who benefits. And, when you ask better questions, better things start happening. You carry yourself like someone who expects follow-through from life, not miracles. You don't chase validation because you understand how transactional attention can be. You recognize manipulation without needing to call it out. You let people expose themselves through consistency or the lack of it. That's not coldness, that's efficiency. There's humor in you now that didn't exist before. Dark, subtle, controlled. You laugh at tension because you've already lived through worse. You see chaos and think, yeah, I know how this ends for people who don't adapt. You don't need to say it. Your posture handles the communication. Even your mistakes are calmer. You don't spiral. You adjust. You course correct without announcing it like a confession. You stopped mistaking self-punishment for growth. You stopped bleeding publicly, hoping someone would notice and care. You patched yourself up quietly and kept moving. And here's the part nobody warns you about. When pressure lifts, grief sometimes shows up. Grief for the version of you that survived everything without backup. Grief for the times you should have been protected and weren't. That grief doesn't weaken you, it deepens you. It adds weight to your presence. It teaches you what to never tolerate again. You're not hardened, you're reinforced. You walk into the future with fewer words and sharper instincts. You trust your read of situations because it's been tested under fire. You don't rush emotional connections because, chemistry without alignment is just noise. You're okay being misunderstood by people who only know the old you because the new you doesn't need their permission to exist. And as you keep moving like this, steady, alert, strangely calm, things keep reorganizing around you. Not dramatically, not loudly, just efficiently. Like the universe finally realized it wasted a lot of effort pushing against someone who was never meant to collapse, only to become more precise with every hit, every pause, every quiet moment where you chose awareness over reaction and kept walking forward with that same slight smile, that same grounded pace, that same unexplainable certainty settling deeper into your bones as the path keeps unfolding exactly where your feet land. Because that certainty, it doesn't shout. It hums under everything you do. You wake up different lately. Not hyped, not anxious, just alert. like part of you stopped sleeping, even when your body does. You scan rooms automatically. You clock tone shifts before words change. You feel when something's off, and you don't gaslight yourself out of it anymore. You trust that internal read because it saved you too many times to ignore. There was a version of you that tried to make everybody comfortable. You remember that one, the one who softened edges, swallowed reactions, laughed things off just to keep the air light. That version paid a price nobody ever reimbursed. And here's the twist. You don't hate that version. You respect it. It got you through a hostile level with no armor. But you don't live there anymore. You've upgraded. You don't enter spaces asking what you're allowed to be. You enter noticing who tightens up, who performs, who mirrors, who suddenly changes posture like they just sensed weather coming in. That's not ego. That's awareness meeting resistance. And resistance always snitches on itself. Your patience looks different now. It's not endless, it's selective. You let people speak longer than necessary because you understand most people tell on themselves if you don't interrupt. You don't rush to correct narratives that won't survive contact with reality anyway. You've seen lies age. They wrinkle fast. And the Joker part of you, the part they never fully understood, that's the piece that kept you sane. Humor in pressure, irony in chaos, that sideways grin when things get intense because you know intensity doesn't mean danger anymore. You've been dangerous and controlled. Most people only know one of those states. You've noticed how some folks keep trying to pull you back into old dynamics. They bring up the past like it's a contract you forgot to cancel. They reference old favors, old versions, old access points that don't exist anymore. You don't argue, you don't explain, you just don't respond the same way. And that silence, it echoes louder than a speech ever could. Control is quiet, always has been. You move through obstacles without announcing the difficulty. You handle things internally that would have broken you years ago. You don't need applause for surviving storms anymore. You're more interested in owning the climate. You don't chase safety. You become predictable to yourself. And that's stronger. Even your anger changed. It's not explosive. It's surgical. It comes with clarity, not chaos. It shows you exactly where the boundary is and what happens if it gets crossed. You don't threaten. You don't posture. You adjust your distance and let consequences do the talking. Funny thing, people feel it when you're no longer afraid to walk away mid-sentence, mid-deal, mid-expectation. They sense it when your life doesn't hinge on their response. That's when power dynamics flip without a meeting, without a memo, without witnesses. You've also stopped romanticizing struggle. You don't wear pain like a personality trait anymore. You learned the lesson, you archived the experience, you kept the skill set. You're not here to prove how much you can endure. You already know. You're here to choose what deserves access to that endurance. And the range you have now, that's dangerous in the best way. You can be warm without being weak. You can be distant without being cruel. You can laugh, disappear, reappear, recalibrate, all without losing your center. You're flexible because you're grounded, not because you're unsure. There's momentum around you that doesn't feel rushed. It feels earned. Like things lining up not because you forced them, but because you finally stopped blocking them with self-doubt and over-explanation. You're not attracting chaos as much. You're attracting outcomes that require follow-through. And as you keep moving through this, head clear, spine straight, humor intact. You start to enjoy the unpredictability again. Not the reckless kind, the intelligent kind. The kind where you know whatever shows up, you'll read it, handle it, and keep going without losing yourself, without shrinking, without announcing every internal shift, letting the path keep adjusting under your feet as your presence continues to reshape the room you're about to walk into. Because the room doesn't just react to volume, it reacts to presence, and yours has weight even when you're quiet. You catch yourself pausing before responding, not out of confusion, but because you already see 3 steps ahead, and you're deciding how much of that future someone deserves access to. That pause changes everything. People fill it with nerves, with rambling, with oversharing, because silence exposes intent. You don't fear that space anymore. You built a home in it. There was a time you felt behind, remember? Like the world handed everyone else a map and left you guessing, watching people flex things you couldn't afford, confidence you hadn't unlocked yet, opportunities that seemed gate-kept by invisible hands. You thought you missed the window. Turns out you were being trained to break the frame instead of squeezing through it. Urgency doesn't own you anymore. Deadlines don't panic you. Pressure doesn't rush you. You move when it makes sense, not when anxiety kicks the door. That alone short-circuits entire systems built on keeping people reactive. You respond when ready, not when poked. You've noticed how energy vampires get confused around you lately. The ones who used to trigger a reaction, a rant, a defensive explanation. They poke the old buttons and nothing lights up. They smile awkwardly. They try again. Still nothing. That moment right there. That's when they realize the version of you they studied doesn't exist anymore. You don't correct them. That discovery belongs to them. Your confidence doesn't bounce anymore. It's anchored. It doesn't spike with compliments or sink with criticism. You stopped outsourcing your stability to external feedback. You learned that most opinions are projections trying to rent space in your head. Rent-free living got canceled without an eviction notice. You've also learned how to enjoy the game without gambling your soul. You play smart. You read contracts, read rooms, read people. You sense when something's rushed for a reason, when generosity comes with strings, when silence is strategic. That awareness didn't make you cynical. It made you precise. Precision is peaceful. Even your walk changed. Shoulders relaxed, eyes steady, breathing deeper. You don't scan for threats the same way because you trust your response capability. Fear fades when you know you can handle whatever stands up in front of you. You're not fearless, you're capable. There's a difference. People still project their nonsense onto you sometimes. They assume motives, they assign roles, they guess stories that make them feel comfortable. You don't argue with fiction. You don't chase misunderstandings. You let time expose what patience already knows. Consistency beats explanations every single time. And underneath all that calm, the Joker in you smiles, not manic, not reckless, a knowing smile. The kind that shows up when tension peaks, and you realize you're built for the moment everyone else is pretending to survive. You see irony everywhere. You see how seriously people take illusions, and how casually truth rearranges lives when it finally shows up. You don't crave chaos, but you're fluent in it. You don't manufacture storms, but when weather shifts, you don't freeze. You adjust your stance. Hey, you. All of you who felt that pressure in your chest before anything even happened. All of you who noticed the cracks forming while everybody else was still posting filters and pretending everything was fine. Good to see you. For real. Because right now, the meltdown is here. And you warned them before? You felt this coming when the room was still laughing. You've been standing there watching it unravel like a slow car crash, and you didn't need charts, news alerts, or expert opinions to know. You just knew. Something in your gut was screaming before your mouth ever opened. Something was off. Energy was shifting. People were getting louder, dumber, more desperate. Systems that looked solid were wobbling. Smiles were forced. Promises started sounding recycled. And when you tried to say it, when you gently hinted, when you joked about it, when you finally flat out said it, they brushed you off. Oh, relax. You're overthinking. You're too negative. Stop being dramatic. Funny how quiet those voices get when everything starts burning at once. Because here's the part nobody talks about. Being right too early feels exactly like being wrong. You don't get applause. You get side eyes. You get labeled unstable, pessimistic, problematic. You start questioning your own sanity, like, damn, am I tripping, or is this whole setup about to crack wide open? And meanwhile, you're still going to work, still paying bills, still showing up to rooms that feel fake as hell, watching people gamble their futures on vibes and lies, and you kept seeing it over and over. Patterns repeating, same mistakes, different hashtags, same greed, new slogans, same collapse, different decade. You noticed how people stopped listening and started reacting, how attention spans vanished, how loyalty turned transactional, how truth became optional, how everyone wanted comfort, not clarity. You saw friendships turning flaky, leadership getting thinner, morality becoming a trend instead of a spine. You felt that pressure building, like the air before a storm nobody wants to acknowledge. That's the burden they never warned you about. When you see ahead, you live alone with the future for a while. And let's be real, it messed with your head sometimes. There were nights you lay there staring at the ceiling thinking, am I cursed with awareness? You dumbed yourself down in conversations just to survive socially. You learned to keep quiet not because you were wrong, but because you were tired of explaining what others refused to see. You learned restraint. You learned silence. You learned how to stand in chaos without flinching. And now, look around. Everything you picked up on. It's loud now. It's public. It's trending. People are panicking, scrambling, pointing fingers, like they just woke up inside the nightmare you were describing years ago. Institutions glitching, relationships imploding, trust evaporating. Everybody acting surprised like this came out of nowhere. It didn't. You've been saying it with your eyes, your tone, your hesitations, your pauses. You said it every time you chose distance over drama, every time you walked away early, every time you questioned hype, every time you refused to worship shiny things that felt hollow. Your nervous system clocked it before logic could even articulate it. And listen to this part close, this meltdown. It's not a punishment. It's a reveal. Chaos doesn't create character. It exposes it. And that's why you're not panicking. You're alert, yeah. But you're not losing yourself. Because somewhere along the way, you built internal structure while everyone else outsourced theirs to trends, leaders, validation, routines they didn't understand. You learned how to self-regulate while others numbed out. You learned how to read energy, motive, timing. You learned patience in a world addicted to instant gratification. They called you slow. You were strategic. They said you were quiet. You were observant. They thought you were disconnected. You were conserving bandwidth. That Joker smile everyone misunderstands. That's not madness. That's the look of someone who watched the whole joke play out in advance. The laugh isn't about destruction. It's about irony. About knowing the punchline before the setup finishes. About realizing the same people who mocked your caution are now begging for stability you already learned how to live without. And yeah, part of you wants to say, "I told you so." Let's not lie. That urge is human, but deeper than that. There's clarity, there's a groundedness, a calm that comes from preparedness, not denial. You're not enjoying the meltdown, but you're not surprised by it either. You adjusted early. You emotionally detached where needed. You hardened certain boundaries. You stopped depending on systems that felt fake. You stopped expecting people to be something they weren't ready to be. And that's why, even now, when things are loud and shaky, you're still standing upright. This moment is validating in a way nobody taught you to handle. Because being right doesn't always feel good. It feels heavy. It means you carry responsibility. It means you see consequences before lessons land. It means you're built for seasons others break in. And here's the wild part. This isn't even your peak awareness. This is just confirmation that your inner compass works. That voice you doubted, it's calibrated. That discomfort you felt back then, that was data. That loneliness, training. That restraint, discipline forming under pressure. You're not here to blend in during collapse. You're here to move differently through it. While others are chasing replacements for what's falling apart, you're recognizing what was never solid to begin with. While others are outsourcing blame, you're integrating lessons. While others are scrambling for guidance, you've already been navigating internally for years. And, that scares people. Not loudly, quietly. Because once someone realizes you see patterns instead of moments, they realize they can't fool you with surface-level nonsense. They realize you're not reacting, you're reading. You're not emotional, you're aware. And awareness is disruptive in a world built on noise. You didn't predict disaster because you wanted chaos. You predicted it because you pay attention, and paying attention in a distracted world makes you look prophetic when things finally catch up. So stand there, breathe. Let the noise shake itself out around you. Let the truth surface without you forcing it. Let the meltdown reveal what you already sensed beneath the surface. Because awareness isn't loud, it's steady. You're not behind. You're not late. You were early and prepared to be misunderstood for it. And everything unfolding right now is just reality, finally admitting you were never crazy in the first place. Because once that realization settles in, yeah, it changes how you move through all of this. You start seeing panic the way a chess player sees blunders. Loud, rushed, emotional, predictable. You watch people scramble for certainty, clinging to headlines, hot takes, loud leaders who promise safety but feel shaky as hell when you really listen. And you're standing there like, yeah, this tracks. This is exactly how it always breaks down before the truth shows up uninvited. You remember the early signs vividly, the forced optimism, the everything's fine energy that never quite reached the eyes. Conversations getting shallow, values getting negotiable, people trading long-term stability for short-term comfort like it's a clearance sale. You tried to speak in a tone soft enough not to scare anyone, tried humor, tried hints, tried silence even. But the signal was already lost in the noise. Nobody wants to hear about cracks when the paint still looks fresh. And you paid for that awareness socially. Let's be honest, you got distance instead of dialogue. You got skepticism instead of curiosity. People treated your clarity like negativity and your caution like fear. You started realizing how uncomfortable it makes folks when someone refuses to fully buy into the illusion. Not aggressively, not dramatically, just opt-out energy. The Joker energy isn't about chaos for you. It's about seeing the joke while everyone else is still clapping. There's a weird weight that comes with that kind of sight. You walk into rooms already knowing how they'll end. You watch partnerships unfold already aware of where trust fractures. You hear confidence in people's voices and simultaneously register the insecurity tucked underneath it. That doesn't make you superior. It just makes things quieter inside you. Less reactive, more detached in a calm, observant way. And yeah, sometimes lonely as hell. But this meltdown, it's loud enough that even the sleepwalkers can't ignore it anymore. Masks slipping, scripts failing. People realizing stability isn't guaranteed just because it existed yesterday, and they're shook. You can hear it in how conversations jump, how tempers flare, how certainty evaporates mid-sentence. Everyone feels unmoored, like the floor moved and nobody updated the map. You, though, you already adjusted your balance before the quake hit. You learned how to stand on moving ground. You stopped relying on applause. You stopped waiting for permission. You stopped expecting clarity from people who avoid themselves. You built a kind of internal structure that doesn't collapse just because the outside is loud. That's why you're not spiraling. You're processing. Yeah, you're alert. You're recalibrating. But you're not losing your sense of self in the noise. And here's the part that hits deep. You didn't learn this in comfort. You learned it in those quiet moments of doubt when you almost gaslit yourself into thinking your instincts were wrong. In those pauses where you chose to trust your read over the crowd's confidence. In those times, you walked away without closure because something felt misaligned. You trained for this without knowing that's what you were doing. People think the Joker laughs because nothing matters. Nah, it's because everything finally makes sense. The laughter is recognition, irony, pattern completion. Watching the same behaviors repeat at scale and realizing awareness really was the edge all along. When systems depend on denial, the ones who see clearly become problematic by default. And as things keep unfolding, you'll notice how people start searching your face differently. Not openly, subtle, curious. Like something in them recognizes you've been here mentally before everybody else arrived physically. They'll ask how you knew. They'll ask when you realized. They'll ask what you think happens next. And you won't rush to answer, because you already understand the real lesson isn't prediction. It's perception. You're not here to save anyone. You're here to remain intact while everything else reveals what it truly is. That's power in its quiet form. That's composure. That's awareness that doesn't need a microphone. And as the meltdown keeps shaking layers loose, you'll keep noticing how truth doesn't announce itself. It just starts standing where lies used to sit. And the room feels different all of a sudden. Conversations shift. Energy drops. People hesitate mid-sentence because something real just entered the space and nobody rehearsed for that part. Because authenticity doesn't come with a script, and you can feel that tension when it shows up. The room doesn't explode or anything dramatic like that, it just shifts. People start clearing their throats, phones come out, eye contact gets weird. You're standing there calm, breathing steady, and everyone else is doing this internal recalculation like, wait, why does this feel heavier all of a sudden? You start noticing how fast opinions change once consequences get close. Folks who were loud before suddenly speak in softer tones. The confident ones hedge. The jokers stop joking. And you're not even saying much. Half the time you're just listening. But your presence alone feels different because you're not chasing reassurance. You already lived through the emotional version of this collapse earlier. Quietly, internally, when nobody believed you and you had to self-soothe instead of self-destruct. That's the part they don't see. They think foresight is some gift that shows up fully formed. Nah. It was built through discomfort, through being misunderstood, through catching yourself explaining less because explaining more never worked. Through realizing validation wasn't coming and deciding to keep your spine anyway. You learned how to sit with uncertainty without freaking out. How to tell the difference between intuition and anxiety. How to wait without rotting. And yeah, there were moments you wondered if you were being too rigid, too detached, too cynical. You checked yourself. You stayed human. You stayed open. But you didn't abandon your perception just to stay comfortable around people who hated being challenged by reality. That balance? That's rare. That's hard. That's earned. As things keep unraveling, you'll clock how quickly people start rewriting history. We all knew this was coming, they'll say, like you weren't the one quietly sounding the alarm while they changed the topic. Memory gets slippery when accountability shows up. You won't argue about it. You won't need receipts. You're not here to win debates. You're here to stay aligned. And, alignment hits different in chaos. You feel it in your body. Less jittery energy, less reactive thinking. Even your exhaustion feels cleaner, like it comes from witnessing rather than fighting. You're not scrambling for answers. You've been asking better questions for a long time. Questions about incentives, about patterns, about character under pressure, about what people do when there's nothing left to hide behind. That Joker edge in you sharpens right here. Not as cruelty, not as destruction, but as clarity that cuts through nonsense without raising its voice. You understand why people cling to illusions. You get it. Comfort is addictive. Certainty is seductive. But you also know illusions charge interest, and the bill always comes due at the worst possible time. That's why you're not rushing to replace anything that's falling apart. Jobs, roles, identities, relationships that can't survive honesty. We're already living on borrowed time. You feel the relief mixed in with the heaviness, even if you don't say it out loud. Relief that the pretending phase is over. Relief that the air is finally thinner but cleaner. Relief that your instincts didn't betray you after all. People will keep projecting their panic onto you too. Watch for that. They'll call you cold when you're composed, arrogant when you're grounded, lucky when you're prepared, anything but willing to admit that awareness costs something up front. You paid early, they're paying loud, and still, you don't harden. That's important. You keep your empathy sharp but selective. You don't numb out. You don't gloat. You stay observant. That's how you avoid becoming what this meltdown is exposing. You're proof that seeing the cracks doesn't mean you want the building to fall. It means you don't stand under weak ceilings, pretending gravity doesn't exist. And as the noise keeps rising and falling in waves, you stay right there in that steady middle space, reading the room without being swallowed by it, breathing through moments that would have wrecked the old version of you, noticing how every breakdown peels back another layer of truth, another motive, another fear people didn't even know they were carrying. And you can feel there's still more surfacing, more tension stretching thin, more realizations lining up just before they hit, like the pause before a laugh that isn't funny yet but unmistakable once it lands, like something is still forming in the chaos, still revealing itself, still pressing against the edge of awareness, waiting to be seen. And you notice how time feels weird in moments like this, like it stretches out and compresses at the same time. Days feel longer because everybody's emotional, reactive, glued to updates. Refreshing feeds like answers are dropping any second, and you're watching that behavior knowing it doesn't actually settle anything. You already learned that clarity doesn't arrive by spamming refresh. It arrives when you sit still long enough to hear what your body's been telling you the whole time. You can almost feel the desperation humming in the air, people making sudden moves, abrupt decisions, burning bridges out of panic and calling it bravery, grabbing onto new beliefs overnight because the old ones collapsed too fast. And you're like, yeah. This is what happens when folks skip the inner work and expect the world to stay stable anyway. You're not judging, but you're not confused either. You remember when you slowed down before this phase, when you pulled back socially, emotionally, mentally, when people thought you were isolating, but really you were calibrating, when you stopped oversharing because not everyone deserves access to your processing, when you stopped arguing because you realized most debates weren't about truth, they were about comfort. That restraint wasn't weakness, it was instinct protecting itself. And the Joker thing in you? It's sharper here. Not louder, not reckless, sharper. You see irony layered on irony. The same people who mocked intuition are suddenly quoting it. The same ones who trusted surface-level confidence are shaken by how fragile it turned out to be. The same ones who hated depth are starving for it now, knocking on doors they laughed at before. You're standing there with this quiet internal grin, not because people are struggling, but because the pattern completed exactly how your nervous system predicted. There's a strange peace in watching reality stop gaslighting you, in realizing the discomfort you carried early was just borrowed from this moment. You already processed it. You already felt the shock in advance. And, you can feel how your reactions have changed, too. Old triggers don't hook the same way. Drama doesn't pull you in like it used to. You're not looking to be right out loud. You're looking to stay coherent inside. You don't explain your calm anymore. You protect it. You don't rush timelines. You let things reveal themselves at their own pace. The meltdown exposes who only knew how to perform stability versus who actually built it. You built yours in silence, in unanswered texts, in moments of doubt where you had nobody to reassure you except yourself, in nights where your thoughts wandered dark corridors and still came back with clarity instead of chaos. That's not luck, that's endurance. You're also realizing how many people outsourced their discernment to groups, to trends, to personalities, to consensus. You didn't do that, even when it would have made things easier socially. You trusted the read. You trusted the pause when everyone else sprinted. You trusted the gut check when applause was loud but hollow. And right here, when everything feels unstable, your patience becomes visible. Not flashy, not performative, observable. People sense it before they articulate it. Conversations slow down around you. People reveal more than they intend. You hear fear disguised as logic, anxiety dressed up as urgency. You don't weaponize that. You just notice, because awareness like yours doesn't need theatrics. It's unsettling enough on its own.